Hello and a very warm welcome to the late-breaking F1 podcast presented by Harry Eade, Sam Sage and me, Ben Hocking, today reviewing the Bahrain Grand Prix, won from pole by Oscar Piastri of McLaren, joined on the podium by George Russell and Piastri's teammate Lando Norris. At the time of recording, we're not sure if George Russell will definitely keep that second place. He's under investigation for using DRS when he shouldn't have done, owing to some sort of sensor issue. But Sam, we were manifesting positivity as part of the preview episode, and I like to think that worked.
I think it was a pretty solid Grand Prix. Lots of action, lots of weird technical problems, lots of drivers moaning about tyres. We saw every compound of tyre. It was all right. Harry Eade, did you enjoy it? So we haven't spoken to you since before qualifying.
I did enjoy it. And I said this to Ben before we recorded and before you joined the session, Sam. Who would have thought that alternate tyre strategies generate an interesting race?
Oh, never saw that coming.
Us. Yeah. We'd have thought it.
Yeah.
Guess who's back in the house?
Look,
late breaking right again.
They said before the race, they've gone a step softer with the tyre for Bahrain this year. Oh my God. I think it worked. Do that everywhere, please.
I liked this race, liked it a lot, and there's plenty for us to get into. It was much easier writing a schedule today than last week, so thank you, F1. We'll be talking about Red Bull and their struggles, Ferrari finishing 4th and 5th. Great points for both Haas and Pierre Gasly today, but let's start out front with that win, that 15.5-second victory from Oscar Piastri over George Russell and then Lando Norris. Sam, start with you. I mean, Oscar Piastri, this isn't the first time we've seen him win so far this year. He took victory, of course, at the Chinese Grand Prix as well. A little bit of jeopardy came into this when the safety car made an appearance. He had a very comfortable lead up until that point. But on those medium tyres, he went off into the distance. How impressed were you by Piastri?
Yeah, 2 poles, 2 wins from Piastri so far this season, and I think this one was by far the most impressive. The gap before the safety car sitting around 8 or 9 seconds, I believe it was. So the fact that, with less than half distance, he was able to suddenly pull out a 15-second plus gap over the likes of George Russell and Lando Norris, who, okay, sure, George Russell was driving through every problem a Formula One driver can have imaginable, and Lando Norris was just... He's having a tough time, wasn't he, this race weekend? He was struggling through it a little bit, was old Lando Norris, but Piastri was just ruthless. He was so calm, so consistent. The way he was just churning out lap time. He's got something, this Oscar Piastri kid. He's all right at this Formula One business, I think. And I'm starting to wonder if he might be the real deal and he might just be surpassing Lando Norris in overall ability. I'm going to call it now. He's the bigger threat for championship victory than Lando Norris. I think that mistake in Australia, which was a tricky one for anyone, and I said it at the time, that could have gone the way of Piastri rather than Norris. It was just a bit of bad luck, really. I think that gap's going to come down pretty quickly. And actually, I'm not a betting man, but if I were to put my money on it, coming out of Saudi in a week's time, Piastri will be in front of Norris in the championship lead. It's just a mindset thing. Piastri's got it. Norris, I don't know. He just hasn't got the mindset of a champion. And I think that's starting to come back to bite him.
Well, within reason, when we get to Saudi Arabia, it's whoever finishes ahead of the McLarens is likely to be ahead in the championship. We've now got 14 points separating Lando Norris in the lead on 77, down to George Russell in 4th on 63, and Piastri's just 3 points off the lead in 2nd place after that win today. Harry, we saw last year one of Piastri's victories, the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, really relied on effective tyre wear. Today, as we've already discussed, another race where tyre wear was probably the leading conversation. How impressed were you by what Piastri was able to do?
Yeah, he could look after his tyres better than anyone else could, but at the same time was really quick. She's actually quite a deadly combo for F1.
Dehydrated.
And dehydrated, yeah. Make sure you drink water. I would if I could. You sassy boy.
Calm as well.
Yeah, I would.
I would if I could.
If it wasn't broken, I might give it a go.
If you supplied me some actual water. But yeah, I'm very impressive from Piastri today. He's just very, well, we know this. He's very cool, calm and collected. I know there wasn't a great deal of pressure from behind him. Obviously, there was the safety car, but the fact that he then had an even bigger gap after the safety car than he did before the safety car showed how much he could look after those tyres and just disappear into the distance. So Yeah, he is giving Lando Norris quite a headache at the moment. And it's showing a little bit, I think, of the way Norris is driving, which we'll get onto. But yeah, Piastri was sublime today. I don't think there's anything you could say he did wrong. And maybe that'll show in our power rankings, which we'll record tomorrow for Patreon. But honestly, yeah, I think he was perfect. I'm not sure you could say he did anything wrong.
He did nothing wrong at all. And I don't think there was a moment in this Grand Prix where I thought he was going to lose this. Not at the first corner, not when the safety car happened, not at any point in any of the stints that I reasonably think Piastri's in trouble. He always seemed like he was in control. And to open up a 15.5 second advantage, given there was a safety car about halfway through this Grand Prix, is mightily impressive on those medium tyres. He was quicker than Norris throughout practice. He was quicker in qualifying. He was quicker in the race. This was a dominant weekend from start to finish. And when we made our preseason predictions, I think of the three of us, I was the one that was most hesitant about Piastri and whether he could take that step forward and match Lando Norris. This for me was the defining race that tells me that yes, he can. Like, he's been close to Lando Norris and in some instances ahead of Norris to this point in the year. But this is the one that's really sold me on, if McLaren keep this up, he is capable of winning a title. Like, he is capable, as is Norris. And at this point in the season, I could feasibly believe either of them could win. But Piastri could well be in that fight, because what we saw today was just very impressive. Not too much to add on top of that, because we didn't see him a great deal. I always think that's the mark of an excellent race, is we don't see them much because they're just not under threat from another driver or another team. That battle for P2, George Russell versus Lando Norris, ultimately George Russell just about finishing ahead of Norris despite pressure on that final lap. Again, Harry, we're not 100% sure if Russell will be penalised at all for the DRS infringement. But in terms of the performance of Russell, how impressed were you that he was able to get his second place back that he ultimately lost due to a one-place penalty after qualifying?
I think there's only one word to describe his performance: audacious.
Oh, there it is.
Audacious.
No, look, once again, George Russell, the burglar of a F1 driver, stealing a P2 when, quite frankly, he shouldn't have done. I thought he was mightily impressive again today. Obviously, the caveat of that he's currently under investigation, but Russell did everything he could to stay in P2. Obviously, he nailed it at the start. He got past Leclerc, and then later on, when he was given the soft tyre for that final stint, which was bold. Not the most ridiculous idea from Mercedes, but it was a bold one to have to hold on to those for that amount of time. He made it work, and made it work whilst also suffering with a lot of car issues at the same time, and having to defend from Leclerc and then also Norris later on in the race. I think, as he said in the interview after the race, had it been a lap or two more, he probably would have lost P2, but that's the distance of the race, and he held on for long enough. So, Russell keeping himself in this title hunt, despite the fact he's not actually won any races yet. So, very impressed again by George. He's driving with, again, like Piastri, quite a calm head this year, and delivering. So, yeah. Good stuff from audacious George, as we'll call it now.
I like that. I was mightily impressed by Russell as well. This is an instance where I think Piastri was impressive in his own way out front, but Russell equally did everything he needed to do in this Grand Prix. And I think going into the weekend, he absolutely would have taken a second place finish. I don't think it was incredibly likely. Mercedes as a whole, I think, will be encouraged by the fact that they've gone to a much warmer race than what we had at Suzuka, and they have performed well. Okay, they didn't have the pace of McLaren, but equally, it's not like Ferrari or Red Bull have been able to outpace them this weekend. And what Russell was able to do defensively towards the end of that race was mightily impressive. I liked that they went for the soft tyre on the last stint. I think that was the right decision. I wasn't impressed by the hard tyre for pretty much this entire Grand Prix. So I know it seemed bold at the time, and George Russell made that known over team radio, but I do think it was the correct decision. And the way in which he was able to defend late on, even with those tyres wearing down, good stuff. Sam, your thoughts on Russell?
Oh, he's so impressive. He's elevating himself again from last season. Last season, we complimented him about how he went up against Lewis Hamilton, how he was driving a car that was tricky to manage. And he's coming to this new season. And that Mercedes is a better car than what it was last season. It looks much more direct. It looks much more fluid through the corners, much more stable, which is a really good thing to have in any kind of car. But George Russell is maximizing that. Right from the moment the lights went green, he was aggressive in a very measured way. He was able to take the fight straight to the McLarens, and that McLaren is far faster. And the way that he was holding off Lando Norris, and he shouldn't have been holding off Lando Norris. That McLaren should have kind of turned up, got the job done, and driven off again, because of the gap that Piastri put on Russell tells you the difference in that car performance. Because I think Russell was going all guns blazing for those last 20 laps or so after the safety car came in. He is phenomenal right now. George Russell is really having the season of his career so far. Let's hope he keeps it up. Let's hope Mercedes give him a package that means he can continue to fight at the front. I'm so impressed. A brilliant P2. Whilst I think the fair sporting code probably says that a penalty is up for debate, it would be quite gutting for George Russell and George Russell fans if he did get a penalty, because this was such a hard-fought P2.
Now, Lando Norris's Grand Prix is a tricky one to summarize, but I'll give it an attempt. He started in P6, which I think we can agree was lower than he would have wanted on the grid. Had an excellent start to the race, which is something that was a real struggle for him last year. Manages to get up to third place very early on. Then the news comes across that he was out of his grid spot, as picked up by Max Verstappen almost immediately. Just it's every week it's something, isn't it? Verstappen is finding. He takes the 5-second penalty. Doesn't hurt him all that much with the way that the start has unfolded. Needs to make up ground late on. Is in fourth place behind Charles Leclerc. Has a few attempts before getting that overtake done, but then ultimately not able to get the overtake done on George Russell for second. It was a bit of an up and down one, Harry. How do you rate it overall?
Not ideal for Lando Norris, and sloppy is what I'll go for the word to describe it. It's look, his struggle started with where he qualified yesterday, and obviously he did get the great start, so he'd done a lot of hard work already. But obviously the great start was aided by the fact that he wasn't even in his grid box. So that's going to get you a good start, Lando. And then when it came to overtakes during the race, obviously the one on Hamilton, he did it illegally, so he had to give it back. And then later on with Leclerc, he wasn't particularly decisive in that one. And with Russell, again, I said this to you, Ben, beforehand, that last lap move, that was done. That would have been done into turn 4. I'm convinced it had been done into turn 4. And he decided to try go on the outside of turn 1. Why? What are you doing? I just didn't understand that, because he had it all. For once, Russell had gone defensive into T1. So Lando had him out of position, and he decided, that's my chance. I'll just go on the outside of him. So obviously George was like, well, no, you're not, son, and closed the door. So yeah, his racecraft, which we have commented on before, last year with Verstappen, has let him down a bit today, because he certainly could have been P2. And honestly, I think his pace was really good. He just never really got a chance to show it because of all of those sort of errors along the way. So it would have been really interesting had he been able to even get up to P2 at some point to see where he would have been versus Piastri, because I do think his pace was on a par with Piastri. I think Piastri probably still would have won. But for the most part, I think we'd have had quite an interesting battle for the lead versus the two McLarens. So yeah, I think Norris can only blame himself for how today went. It's still not a disaster. He was P3. He's only just lost the lead of the championship. But yeah, sloppy.
Sam, you, I think it's fair to say, voiced your disappointment at Lando Norris's performance yesterday in qualifying. How did the race measure up?
It's just a calamity of errors. It's just, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Every time that a door opens for Lando Norris, it seems like he walks up and slams it shut himself. And I don't really understand how he can't seem to really take advantage of some of the opportunities coming his way. He sets himself up on the grid, misses his grid box. Okay, well, that's already your own fault. You've already made an issue there. Then okay, he's rectifying this. He's got great pace. And actually, you know what? The door is opening continuously because where he comes out after his pit stop, every single bit of traffic that could get in his way seems to conveniently pit the moment he gets DRS, rocks up to the back of them, they pit. Thanks, haven't got to worry about overtaking you. Every single time that pretty much happened. Then the overtake comes with Lewis Hamilton. First go at having a go at that one. Proper lockup, straight into the corner, goes too deep, mucks that around as well. Has another go, runs off the track, has to get the position back. Another failure. Gets the safety car to go his way. Brilliant. Has a muck up where Leclerc gets back in front of him, has to re-overtake. Then gets on the back of Russell, can't get the move done. The racecraft is poor. The ability to be consistent is poor. His mindset when he gets out the car, you hear him in the cool-down rule being weirdly jovial and almost, pandering to Piastri. Oh, you had a nice calm racing. Oh, 15 seconds up the road. Yeah, mate, I was quick. I was better than you. So, you could have had that if you were faster. Didn't make enough mistakes. Just be better, Lando. You're going to win a championship. This is not good enough. This is a calamity of errors. You have the car. You have the package underneath you to deliver second place at least. Second place was the minimum he should have got today. Third is a failing. He might get second through penalty. We don't know yet. Third is a failure. Piastri was 15 seconds up the road. That's how you win a race. Not good enough again from Lando Norris. I'm disappointed.
The good news for Lando Norris is that he's leading the championship by 3 points, and we are classifying him as scoring a podium as a failure. Like, you've reached a good level in the sport if we can have a look at this result and say that it wasn't optimal, because it wasn't, but it was far from a disaster either. He still finished on the podium. The racecraft was poor for most of this Grand Prix. I will agree with that. The instance with Hamilton was not fitting of his years of experience in the sport. I think you could see how that one was going to unfold. The lockup when he was trying to overtake Leclerc into one was very disappointing. He took longer to get by Leclerc than he should have done. The move that eventually sealed it was absolutely excellent, but it took too long to get there. I will say on this, because I don't want to be overly negative on Lando Norris, I want to give praise to Charles Leclerc. Some of the defensive work that he put up against Lando Norris was brilliant. Like, this is where we get proper nerdy about this sport. The way in which he just held off the throttle as he was coming out of turn 1 into 2 and 3 to make sure that Norris didn't have a great run on him to then overtake him at turn 4 was beautiful.
It's very Hamilton-Vettel-esque at Spa when they had that safety car restart, right?
Same thing. Yeah, exactly. You know that if you are full pelt as you would ordinarily be out of that corner, you aren't preventing Lando Norris from taking his run, and he's just going to get in the DRS, the slipstream, and make that move. And it still ended up happening in the end. But the way in which Charles Leclerc was like, nah, I'm just gonna wait, and now I'm gonna bolt as I get out of turn 2. That was expertly done. But from Lando Norris's perspective, just as you kicked off the segment with, Harry, not ideal. And we've seen far better from Lando Norris over the last couple of years. I think after Saudi Arabia, he'll be glad to have at least a week off to reset. And I think he used the word reset after qualifying yesterday, because he's still very quick. Like, that pace is still there. But in terms of his judgment, it's not always 100%.
I actually hope he uses this race as motivation going into Saudi. I hope he goes, right, I've got another race in a week. I can turn it around immediately. That wasn't good enough from me. I'm going to now go out and qualify. I'm going to beat Piastri. I'm going to go out in the race. I'm going to beat Piastri again. I really hope he G's himself up and uses that as some motivation to be better.
Okay, we're getting this segment out of the way quickly because it hurts too much. We will review our bold predictions from midweek.
I'm not sure we need to be quick about this. We've got 40 minutes to the end of the episode. I reckon we talk about it the whole way through.
Harry, how many overtakes for the lead did you say there were going to be?
No, there were going to be 4.
Yeah.
4.
If you said
or
none,
more,
you'd have been spot on.
Yeah, it was a good old none on that one.
Piastri heard you and went,
no,
I took that personally.
Yeah. How about no?
Quote Oscar Piastri 2025. Myself and Sam ended up with very similar bold predictions. One of us has ended up on the right side and one of us on the wrong side. If you can't tell by my demeanor, I'm the one on the wrong side. I said that both Alpine drivers were going to score points, and for a while it was looking good because
I was getting a bit shaky.
Because Doohan was scrapping away inside that top 10, but ultimately his tyre wear on the hard compound wasn't as good as Pierre Gasly's, who did finish in the points, which means, Sam, you get the first bold prediction right of the year. You said that Alpine would score points, and they scored 6 of them.
I did. This one goes out to Doohan. Thanks for being my main homie. Appreciate you not being good enough at F1. Much love.
Damn.
That's savage.
Don't do my boy
I
Jack like that.
thought Doohan actually did pretty good this weekend.
Hey, look, if you look at the driver's table of points, I sit one above Doohan. That's how it works.
Sure.
Okay. Not including the sprint that we had at China, we can extend Ferrari's podiumless streak by one more, not featuring on the podium today, despite Charles Leclerc's front row start. He ended up finishing 4th, Lewis Hamilton finishing 5th. So on the one hand, no podium, Sam. On the other hand, their best result of the season so far. We spoke a lot in the preview about the floor upgrade coming into this weekend. How do you evaluate how they performed?
Yeah, really tricky one for Ferrari. I think Charles Leclerc drove brilliantly. I really think, again, he's kind of driving out of his skiing. I don't think that Ferrari is a match for the McLaren or the Mercedes of what Russell is able to drive. So the fact that he was within that battle and only finished a couple of seconds away from that fight for kind of the second, third battle that was going on is a real success story. I actually think Ferrari, before the safety car, also nailed the strategy. The medium was by far a better tyre. They looked like they were being bold by doing a double medium stint. And I assume they were planning on running the soft tyre as their final stint a little bit later on. But for some reason, believed that when everyone else was going to the soft tyre, they didn't think the soft tyre could work. So I do believe that the safety car massively hampered their strategy because they went longer on that first stint. Both Leclerc and Hamilton were reeling in the cars in front. We saw Leclerc join that fight with Norris and Russell. We saw Hamilton get past a lot of the traffic that was in front of him that he couldn't touch beforehand, past Gasly, sitting well in 5th place. And then that's where it stalled. The safety car threw them off. They go into the hard tyre, which, what are you doing, Ferrari? Why are you touching that white wall tyre? Every single driver on that tyre moaned about how bad that tyre was. And you think, yeah, we'll do that. George Russell's going, God, bloody audacious, mate, and pulls it out the bag. And you decide to stick him on 2 sets harder, and you're running around like nobody's business, no pace at all. So it's a real shame that they seem to gain some momentum in the mid part of this Grand Prix, only to have it snatched away by another poor call from Ferrari. I think a podium was likely on the cards if they got that strategy right, or if the safety car didn't come out. It was definitely there. But again, there's another poor choice, and I think that's unfortunate from them. But a better weekend overall. I think Hamilton was a little bit lucky that the tyres worked out as it did, because he was floundering in the middle of no man's land for a little while at the start of this Grand Prix.
Harry, what did you make of Ferrari's performance?
It's not often that I feel this. I feel quite sorry for Ferrari because I think without the safety car, Leclerc's P2 today. I think they were when they obviously we had we'll go on to this, but the Bravo Delta discussions. Why they got names now? But when he was obviously calling for Delta, which I assume was a one stop and to go to the hard, I think Ferrari made the right call. And we're like, nah, because that white hard tyre is absolute arse. We're not using that.
In the words of Lewis Hamilton, this tyre sucks.
Yeah. So I think they made the right call. And when Leclerc came out only just behind Gasly, who he'd been in front of, he'd only lost one position and he got him basically straight away. I was like, oh, hello. Leclerc especially is on a good little strategy here. And obviously Hamilton was also making up ground behind through the traffic. They were brutally unlucky with that safety car because I think they both were going to go onto softs for that last stint. And I think Leclerc might well have got Norris and Russell. So yeah, I feel sorry for them. I too, initially when they put them on the hard tires, I was like, no, why are you doing that? But looking back on it, I'm kind of, they were boxed in because you'd go medium, obviously, but they couldn't because all they've done is put mediums on so far. So they were kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place on what to do. Hindsight, softs, yeah, probably could have made it to the end. We saw Russell could do it. But I don't think it was where they were, with the amount of laps they had left, it wasn't a sure thing that they would make it to the end. So I understand that. I think they will rue the fact that they did go for softs, and maybe they should have split them and put one on softs and one on hards, which is their mistake on that. But I do feel Ferrari a bit hard done by on that one, because they were doing quite well. I was getting ready to compliment them on such a good strategy on the podcast, and obviously then the safety car came out and ruined it for them. So I thought Leclerc, like you said, Sam, was also really impressive today. Hamilton was better in the race than he was in qualifying. He was just having to recover from that. But Leclerc especially, you've obviously mentioned his racecraft as well, was very, very good today. So yeah, it's another missed opportunity for Ferrari. It's in there. I'm telling you that in that car.
It's coming in there.
It's brewing.
like a little metal detector on the beach. Like,
yeah.
Beep, beep. You just got to dig it out for
Can't quite find the ding holes around it. They just can't quite find it.
Come on, find the big beep.
Yeah, I hope the whatever the upgrade comes, is it Miami potentially? Rumored that unlocks it, because if they could just a little bit more, they're there basically. Just a little bit more, we could have a tasty little fight.
Yeah, I largely agree. Pace-wise, it was a little bit difficult to assess where they were versus the other teams, because they were on this alternate strategy, starting on the mediums and then also continuing on the mediums. They did have good pace over their rivals in that middle stint, but there was that tyre offset. So it was a bit difficult to work out that if they started this race on the same compound as everyone else, would they be able to keep up with Norris, with Russell? But overall, I'm more optimistic than I was going into the weekend. I don't think they've caught up to McLaren, but equally, I didn't see much separating them and Mercedes. And in terms of unlucky versus they messed it up, I'm closer to unlucky because they were on for that great strategy. I do believe as well that they were going to do medium, soft. And I actually think that would have worked out as the optimal strategy today. Those hard tyres, for whatever reason, just didn't click. They didn't click when Verstappen had them fairly early on. I know it's not a representative car, but Bortoleto really struggled on them towards the back of the field. I think we had Hadjar as well, didn't make much progress a little bit later on the hard tyre. So I could equally, though, if you are between the choice between softs and hards and you can't use the medium tyre, they went with the strategy that should make sense. Like, they went with the one that in theory was right. And in reality, it wasn't. And fair play to the likes of Mercedes for seeing that the strategy that didn't look like the obvious one was the one to go with. But yeah, I still think starting on the medium tyre was a great call, because whereas other drivers, particularly Verstappen and Antonelli, they didn't have the tyre advantage on the midfield rivals around them to make inroads. Hamilton and Leclerc did. Like, what they did with Leclerc was fantastic, because, like you said, Harry, he didn't really have to overtake anyone. Even though Hamilton did, again, he had that tyre life compared to his rivals that he was able to, with relative ease, sweep past.
Dispatch them so quickly.
Yeah, in a way that Verstappen and Antonelli couldn't. And again, I don't think in terms of pure pace that Ferrari was that much quicker than those cars. It was just the strategy that paid off for them. So no podiums, but overall, because of Red Bull not having a good race and Antonelli not scoring, it's worked out okay for them. Speaking of Antonelli, he walks away with 0 points from this one, Harry. We were actually briefly speaking about Antonelli before we started recording. He's a lot of fun, isn't he?
As I said to you, Ben, I think I'm a little bit in love with him.
Little menaces.
My guy that just sends it from anywhere. Doesn't matter what part of the circuit you're on, he's going to send it.
Move on, Sainz.
Oh my lord!
Jeez.
Turn
4 is called Antonelli Playground, I believe.
Look, it's the move of some of those moves were moves of a rookie driver, but he made them stick. And when I say the moves as a rookie driver, in terms of just the bravery and I guess the lack of experience, in that he's lucky there that Sainz didn't turn in on him. But yeah, my guy is probably, he'll be walking with a limp after today, because he was just like in the wars at every available opportunity, just like in the trenches, fighting everything and everyone. But it's really exciting to watch. And I some of his racecraft was better than Lando Norris's today, quite frankly. And yeah, he was pulling moves left, right, and center. It got him absolutely nothing, but I thought it was very good and entertaining to watch. And look, I know he didn't get any points. He was unlucky with the safety car because he just pitted, so he had to pit again. But he didn't have to, but he did pit again for some new softs.
Only driver to 3-stop today.
Yeah, so that didn't work out in his favor. But I thought, yeah, it was some. I'm sure Toto, even though there was no points out of that, will be very encouraged by how today went for Antonelli, because he was super impressive to watch. And the move on Verstappen and was very measured and actually was quite impressive.
I thought the move on Verstappen was wonderful. And
naughty.
With Antonelli, like, he had two moves, the one on Verstappen and the one on Sainz, and they were both brilliant and for completely different reasons. Like, the send on Sainz was just out of nowhere, Randy Orton style up the inside. No one was expecting it. And then the Verstappen one is such a beautiful move because he makes it into turn 4 and into turn 5. He has set that up from turn 1. Like, he has worked it all the way to that point, which is what you need to do with that first sector. It's very rarely the right move unless you are diving up the inside of turn 1. It's normally the right play is to just strategize it and get it so you're in a position to make that move into 4. I thought his overtakes were brilliant. Now, he's obviously not scored any points. I'm putting that more down to the team than I am him. I think the team let him down with strategy today in a way where I thought they nailed it with George Russell, but with Antonelli, I don't think they did. They managed to get beaten to the first pit stop by Verstappen after that overtake. So he had to essentially do that again if he wanted to get that position back. The second one was unluckier because he would have needed to come in at some point for that second stop. The one under the safety car, I understand why they did it. They would have expected with his soft tires, he would have been able to make up a little bit of ground on those hard tire runners that were keeping going, like Esteban Ocon. Didn't end up that way, was stuck in this DRS train where Tsunoda wasn't able to get the move done on Ocon, and therefore Behrman wasn't able to do anything, and therefore Antonelli wasn't able to do anything. So he was kind of stuck. But I still think overall for the weekend, I'm more positive than negative about what he achieved. Sam, your thoughts on Antonelli?
Yeah, this isn't a sentence you should take out of context, but this kid excites me.
Yeah.
Wow.
He has got.
You mentioned
something.
his playground 2 minutes ago. I am worried.
Well, every time I watched him enter that playground, I had a big smile on my face, quite frankly. He was spectacular in the most ridiculous of ways. You know, the way he was, the move on Verstappen. The guy's a 4-time world champ, one of the best at racecraft we've ever seen in Formula One. And the way he absolutely set him up, pulled his pants down and sent him out for a bag of chips all in 3 corners was sublime. It was so good. Yeah, no points at all. But you know what? This isn't the season where he needs to be consistently up there with 2nd, 3rd, 4th place all the time. He is learning, he's developing. And if he's got this racecraft in his locker already, if he's got this ability to pull out these moves when the opportunity is there, good on you, Kimmy. Keep sending it from absolutely anywhere within the nation that you're racing in, because I want to see more of it. I was so impressed with how gutsy he is, fearless he is. He's got that absolute, the ability to just be so cutthroat with it. Piastri has the same thing, that kind of ability, just rock up, get the move done, see you later, sunshine, I'm off. He did get caught up with the wrong strategy. He had some bad timing. There was a bit of a DRS train. You know, maybe a more experienced head finds a way out of it. But equally, there was a lot of very good drivers in that train that couldn't get any further down the road either. And that sometimes is just the way the cookie crumbles. So big up, Kimi Antonelli. You're a very fun person to watch race a car very quickly. And I think it will just get better and better throughout the season.
Not a great day for Red Bull. Max Verstappen eventually getting to 6th place with a last lap overtake on Pierre Gasly to secure 8 points. Yuki Tsunoda secures his first points for Red Bull in 9th. Let's start with Verstappen, Sam. He wasn't loving life out there. Whenever we heard him over team radio, it was ordinarily to complain about something that was wrong with the car. Obviously wasn't very happy during qualifying either. Has made his way to get some valuable points. He's still very much in that championship fight. He's only 8 points behind Lando Norris in the lead, but this wasn't one of his better days. What did you make of it?
No, it was a tough day out for everyone in the Red Bull office, wasn't it? The last time I feel like he struggled like this with the car and the performance was Hungary, where he ends up running into Hamilton. Do you remember in turn one? I think it was last year, Hungary. And this was a tough day for Verstappen. It showed his quality again, the ability to pull that car up to P6 and only finish 1 spot behind Hamilton, 2 spots behind Leclerc, when that Ferrari clearly had more pace on them than the Red Bull. Was again spectacular. Just shows you the quality that he's able to deliver. But there's something not right with that car. We heard so many different complaints. He can't get the heat into the tyres. The car is overheating. The brakes aren't working. I can't stop the car. I can't get the car turned in. You know, it is just a calamity of issues going on there at Red Bull. You imagine how hard it is for Yuki Tsunoda, bless him, turning out for only race 2 and going, what do I do? Everything's going wrong. And I'm just trying to score some points and not be terrible. So I actually think Yuki did a pretty solid job as well. They're making the best of a bad situation, I think, at that team. The car wasn't clicking right. It wasn't able to function as we've seen it previously throughout the season. They've got a week to try and get this sorting, and hopefully they can come back stronger at Saudi. I'm sure Max Verstappen will be very much on their case throughout the next 3 or 4 days to go, what was wrong? How can we fix it? And how do I get back into those podium positions as soon as possible? Let's hope this was a bit of an outlier of a race day for Red Bull.
Harry, on Verstappen's side of the garage, he still come away with some points. Do you think he made the most of what seemed to be a poor car, or did Red Bull just get something horribly wrong this weekend?
Yeah, once again, Verstappen, even on his worst days, you referenced Hungary last year, which was a terrible day for him, and he still picked up quite a few points there, as he has done today. That car is awful. It was awful around this circuit. Some of the onboard footage of him, it's either understeering, oversteering, or just both at the same time.
I didn't know you could do both, but it's both.
Welcome back, the 2014 Ferrari.
I knew that reference was coming.
I tweeted, I'm not tweeting anymore, but posted this on Twitter, X, from practice. I X'd it, yeah. Cheers, Elon.
Idiots.
Him, of a clip of Verstappen, he couldn't hit the apex. His car's oversteering into like the hairpin, and he's so annoyed he just does a massive burnout. It's just in frustration, which I love. Love that from him. But yeah, look, he obviously got fortunate with the safety car. They left him out. So he gained positions there. And it was a struggle to get past Pierre Gasly, but he did it in the end to pick up some more points, and it has kept him in the fight. But goodness me, the car's crap, and then there's no green lights in their pit box, which doesn't help either.
Sorry, you hold like what, the second fastest pit stop of all time, and now you can't do lights.
Jonathan Wheatley's been gone for a few weeks, and it's all gone terrible.
Ben, I think they took your light bulb analogy a bit too seriously.
Yeah, Jonathan Wheatley's down the other end of the pit lane. He just pulled the slot out. Like,
his nickname around the paddock was the electrician, and now he's moved on.
That is very true. Yeah.
I appreciate Verstappen in that when he's having that issue with the red light. I know Tsunoda had it too, but it's red, so he's almost gone. He stops, sees it still's red, and just looks in his mirror and is like, I've got wheels on, I'll go. Doesn't matter.
My favourite thing is the redundant man next to the light holding another light that's doing the same thing.
Also red.
He looks at it afterwards like, nah, still red.
Still red, lads.
So you see this colour here? Yeah, it's red. Yeah.
Red, that is. You are Team Red Bull. This red.
Oh dear.
Yeah, it was a struggle today for Max Verstappen. Like, he doesn't. I know he picked out Lando Norris. He might have been too observant because he picked out Lando Norris at the start and then had a horrible getaway. Not a great start for him. He's overtaken by Antonelli. He can't overtake anyone. He has 2 bad pit stops for different reasons from the team that is normally perfect at them. He is one of the first on the hard tyre to discover the hard tyre is not a good tyre. He was the only driver, I believe, to save 2 sets of the hard tyre specifically for this Grand Prix to then realise I ain't using the second pair because that first pair weren't very good. And then late in the Grand Prix, he finally has something that works his way, which is the safety car. He's saying, right, Alpine ahead of me, Pierre Gasly, famously terrible in a straight line, doesn't have an engine in the back. And can he overtake him? Not until the last lap. I appreciate he wouldn't have got any further up anyway, but I would have expected him to just overtake him with relative ease. Again, Gasly was on the hard tyre. He would have been struggling. But that Red Bull was not right this weekend. They are going to be very hopeful that it is a track-specific thing and we can get somewhere close to what we had at Suzuka, because they were clearly much better there. But when Verstappen is struggling, you know that something's not quite right. So the fact that he's walked away with 8 points, he's done all right. What about the other side of the garage, Harry? We've got Yuki Tsunoda picking up his first points for the senior Red Bull team in 9th place. We saw him qualify inside the top 10, ultimately not able to make his way past Esteban Ocon late in that Grand Prix to claim more points. But given the struggles that Lawson had and the struggles that Perez had at the end of last year, is this at least something a bit more encouraging?
Yeah, it is more encouraging. It's still not ideal for the second seat of Red Bull, but certainly easily their best result for the second seat all season. And I think pace-wise, Tsunoda was pretty good. I think he probably should have got past the Haas, but he obviously ultimately didn't. But again, I'm not going to judge too harshly because he's literally on race 2 in this car. So I think overall it was pretty good from Yuki Tsunoda. He can be relatively pleased with how he did today. I think there's still work to be done, but as we've just discussed and as Verstappen showed, that car was awful today. Just didn't want to do anything. So I don't think Tsunoda can be too displeased with his performance out there.
Sam, given the struggles of his teammate Verstappen, do you think Tsunoda should be okay with what happened out there today?
I genuinely think this is a step forward for Yuki Tsunoda, and I think it's a better performance for that second seat. I mean, it's the first points that seat has scored all season. So that's something, at least, that he's actually managed to get some points on the board. Clearly, that car is an absolute nightmare. As you've all both mentioned, if Max Verstappen is trying to handle that car, then how is anyone else expected to handle that car? And Yuki did. He did a relatively okay job. He's only a couple of places back from Verstappen. He did a good job to sit with Lewis Hamilton for the first part of that, the first part of the race, first stint. He held off a lot of cars behind him, which looked quite competitive. You know, he was there with Behrman. He was there with Doohan. He was there with the Williams as well, who are much faster in a straight line, I believe. So the fact that he was able to be around it was good, positive. And he got the move down Doohan. He sat there in P9. He gets a couple of points. Again, he had an all right race in Japan at a place where it was almost impossible to do anything. Fine. He's had a good race in Bahrain when the car is absolutely horrendous to drive. Good. Now let's hope we go to Saudi where the car is good and he is good. And I think finally we might see some significant progress with someone like Yuki Tsunoda, who is on the right track at least. So I think he can walk away with his head held high. This has been an all right performance from him.
I feel like going into the weekend, I had question marks about Tsunoda and Red Bull, and I've left the weekend with more question marks. I don't really know what to read into this because Verstappen struggled so much. It's very tricky to analyze whether Tsunoda's done a comparatively pretty good job or whether he has struggled and so has Verstappen. I wasn't particularly impressed earlier on in the Grand Prix when he came out after his first pit stop and he was, I think, 4 to 4.5 seconds behind Jack Doohan. And immediately at that point, I'm thinking, okay, he's going to close this gap pretty quickly. Check back 5 laps later, hasn't really changed. It eventually went down, but it took a long time for him to get there. And then obviously not being able to overtake Esteban Ocon on that last stint, I thought was pretty disappointing. He still picked up points, and that's more than can be said for the second Red Bull seat for quite a long time now. And this was clearly a weekend where the Red Bull wasn't at its strongest. So as you say, Sam, hopefully we get to Saudi Arabia and he can start to show what he can do in a car that's more competitive than this. But yeah, I mean, Red Bull as a whole will, 10 points from this weekend.
That's Ferrari numbers, mate.
That is Ferrari numbers, or maybe 10 more than Ferrari would get at China, possibly. What about Haas? Because Sam, you mentioned that it's something of a test session, this one, after Ocon crashed heavily, and we were suspecting he might have a pit lane start. Behrman qualified last. They finished 8th and 10th, double points. How is Komatsu cooking all the time?
Literally, I don't understand how Komatsu is going, oh, crap, we've run out of ingredients in the kitchen on Saturday. So he's popped down to Asda that they've clearly got in Bahrain, I'm sure. He's brought a load of fresh produce. He's turned back up at the racetrack. He's gone, now I can cook. And look at him go. How have they had a double points finish here? How have Haas done that? Behrman, back of the grid, 10th. Ocon, his car was in pieces on Saturday. The engineer to turn that bad boy around, 8th. What a strategy as well from Haas. The ability to run that long with Ocon and to actually turn it around and ensure that he's right there with Tsunoda. He's right there with Verstappen, obviously until Verstappen finally got going. Gasly's not too far up the road. This was a brilliant performance with both Haas cars because I really do think they are in the real crux of that midfield battle, scrapping away. They haven't really got an obvious advantage over a lot of the cars around them. I mean, Williams, Alpine, the Racing Bulls on their day are seemingly faster. So the fact that they're the team with 2 cars in the points, just sublime. That is so, so good from Haas. So, yeah, fair play. Pat on the back. Another great performance.
Harry, 8th and 10th for Haas, as I'm sure you predicted after qualifying.
Obviously, yeah. Well, yeah, well,
you moved Behrman into your fantasy team because you knew this was coming.
Yeah, man. You are the golden touch.
Thank you, Ollie Behrman, for, I mean, I know you didn't do well yesterday, but at least saving my fantasy team a little bit today because it's been terrible. Look, I know Behrman went out and qualified, so he will be marked down against him on that. But I thought, again, he's very impressive today. I mean, last to points it's pretty damn good. Maybe slightly lucky with the safety car, but yeah, Ocon, they nailed the strategy. There was one when Ocon popped up into the top 10. I was like, hang on, how have they done this? But they stopped him really early on, didn't they? For his first stop, at least. So yeah, once again, Haas cooking and made up for what was a terrible Saturday to a great Sunday. I was very impressed by the pair of them. I thought they drove great races and kept cars behind them that were better than them. I think better than the Haas cars. So very impressive and a good little lineup they've got there at Haas for sure.
It's working pretty well. I think Ollie Behrman's strategy was aided by the safety car, but equally he nailed it. Had a great first lap, made up 5 positions, I think, on the first lap. And then did everything he needed to do to get into that last point scoring position. Esteban Ocon, apparently he can only do 2 good races for every 3 that he does because Japan was awful last week and China the week before was brilliant. He was sensational. And I love to see the return of the Haas strategy of we are going to undercut and then you can't overtake us because we're so quick in a straight line. I am here for it. And Ocon played it brilliantly well. I wasn't sure if he was going to, because he wasn't advantaged by the safety car at all. He was on those awful hard tyres for a long time to end that stint. And I was worried that he was going to get beaten by Tsunoda, by his teammate, by Antonelli, by Albon. The fact that he kept all of them at bay, very good. And they've walked up. How are Haas on 20 points? Like, what are they doing?
Oh, God.
I'm here for it. What about Pierre Gasly? I mean, we've already mentioned this as part of bold predictions, Sam. We were waiting for Alpine to actually do something this season, and here we are. They've finally done something. Yeah,
my man just loves sitting in DRS trains, but for the right reason. He literally attached the back of that, he attached the front of that Alpine to the back of a Ferrari and went, sir, pull me some points. And they pulled because that car sucks in a straight line, but because it's really good in the middle sector, it was able to keep in touch. And because we get DRS on lap 2 now, we don't have to wait an extra lap. He was able to stay within a second. And he just followed along, and fair play to you, Pete Gasly. That's a great strategy. Bit gassing that he got passed by Verstappen right on the last lap, but he put up a valiant defense. He did a really, really good job. And you'd expect Verstappen to get past him anyway, so it's not really a huge disappointment. But it is a worry that it takes Max that long. We've discussed this already. Sorry, Ben, you knocking your mic then is proper throwing me off my train of thought.
Yes, that was I proper went for that as well. I was going to use a word that I couldn't use, but yeah.
Absolutely uppercutted it.
Yeah.
That's a better word than the one I was going to go with that starts with T. But yes.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah.
Big Pete Gasly. So sublime performance. He outdrove the rest of the midfield on both days, both Saturday and Sunday. Brought home very much league points for Alpine. A great strategy. Literally just sit on the back of faster cars, let them pull you along, stay out of trouble, be there at the end of the race. And he was really, really good stuff.
Yeah, I was very, very encouraged to see Alpine actually turn up to a weekend. And it's a bit crazy that we are 4 weekends into a season, 4 races into the year, and the last place team has 6 points. I mean, 6 points would probably make sure you're not last place in nearly every season that we've had. It seems as if that midfield it's not even really like 3 stages of the grid now. It's just the front running cars. And then you've got like 6 teams that could feasibly score some points. I know Sauber got a bit lucky with their points in Australia, but equally they're not that far off the back of the likes of Aston Martin. So yeah, I was impressed by what Gasly was able to do. I know we didn't have the timing tower for the majority of the second half of this race, which is another thing entirely. But whenever we got the makeshift timing tower at the bottom right of the screen,
big fan of that. Big fan.
I actually am not a big fan of that.
That's probably why they don't use it.
Yeah, it got in the way a lot.
But the way in which Gasly was able to not quite stay in touch with Hamilton, but the margin between him and Hamilton in that second part of the race, it was pretty good. Like I genuinely think Alpine had some solid pace here, and I know Jack Doohan didn't quite take advantage of it, but equally I was encouraged by what he was able to do in the first half of this race, and ultimately what separated Doohan and Gasly is Gasly managed those hard tyres better than Doohan did, and Doohan seemed to just completely fall off a cliff in the last sort of 5 or 10 laps. What Gasly was able, I don't mind that he was overtaken by Verstappen. He still had a great day. Harry, a team that didn't come away with any points was Williams. Carlos Sainz started inside the top 10, but was ultimately the only DNF from this Grand Prix, as he only had one side of the car, which doesn't usually help. Alex Albon didn't make it through to Q2 in interesting circumstances yesterday. Managed to make his way up to 12th, but ultimately no points for him either. Will they be disappointed they couldn't find their way in the top 10?
Yeah, I think so. I think they will be. Look, they've had a good start to the season, Williams, especially with Albon. I think they'll be disappointed with the fact they couldn't with Sainz, but to be honest, that's not really his fault because Yuki Tsunoda took a real bite out of his side pod.
Big old chunk,
which we didn't really realise until a bit later on. He's also had a penalty, then a grid place penalty, and now not a grid place penalty in the space of us literally recording this, which is...
I wouldn't confirm it. They'll probably change it another 4 times before we're off.
Also, still going to lose on Russell, despite all of that.
Nah, they got other things to do. But, like disqualifying Nico Hülkenberg.
That's a bold strategy. I don't know.
But yeah, because I think this was Sainz's best weekend of the season so far, and I think they'll be. I think he was due some points until that incident because he was getting past Tsunoda when Tsunoda took a bite out of him, and then his pace just dropped off a cliff because he had a bit of car missing. So they'll be disappointed with that. Albon, was on the fringes. It would have been interesting to see how his one stop was going to work out because they were persevering with it. And then obviously the safety car came on, so they stuck some new mediums on him, but he was in traffic and they were all fairly evenly matched pace-wise. So it never really materialized for him. So yeah, Williams will look at that as a lost opportunity. But I think, it was telling the radio, James Vowles came over the radio to Sainz sort of saying, well done, even though he's out of the race, because I think that is genuine. I think that's generally good, positive news for Sainz because I think it was easily his best weekend so far, and certainly versus Albon. So they'll be disappointed, but I think they can take positive out of that.
Question.
Yes.
We've had a lot of penalties come through, so maybe it just hasn't happened yet. Did anything happen between Tsunoda and Sainz for penalties? They did literally.
They just said they were like, nah. They looked at it and went, "Nah, nothing doing that."
Oh, Carlos came over the radio, didn't he? He was like, "What's going on with that thing?" And they went, "Yeah, investigate, mate. Nothing happening."
Seems a bit unfair because Tsunoda was power sliding his way out the corner when he took a chunk out of him. But all right, we'll move on.
Lawson got a penalty for being next to someone.
Yeah,
it's all right. I mean, they were fairly lenient across the board today, so that's probably why they didn't.
I swear, Kimi Antonelli got about 4 more track extensions, and then after a black and white flag.
Yeah, they actually explained that. They just said it was banter, which I agree with.
Sorry, Antonelli's just too fun to watch, so we're just going to let him carry on doing it.
Funny, isn't it?
I think Sainz will be gutted. I think Williams will be gutted for Sainz. He looked really quick. The pace looked good. Albon as well looked like he had some really solid pace. And we know that he was treated poorly after qualifying. This will be one to miss for Williams fans, and they'll be a little bit gutted that they walked away completely empty-handed.
Well, as Harry mentioned earlier, we have got power rankings that we'll be recording for our top tier on Patreon tomorrow. So you'll be able to hear what we think of both Albon and Sainz from Williams, despite the fact that they haven't scored any points. Not a great result, but that isn't always reflected in our power rankings where we rate everyone from 1 to 10. Should we do driver of the day?
The verdict is in. You're the driver of the day. You're the driver of the day. You're good at driving.
Sam, I think there's a few good contenders here, but who are you going with?
Yeah, I don't want to shout them all out because I know it takes away from others talking about it, but I'm going to go straight in with Gasly. I thought that was genuinely an amazing performance in that Alpine. Whilst it did have some solid pace, it scored no points throughout the whole season. It's clearly not that rapid. And the way that he was able to keep up with Hamilton, stick in that DRS zone, be genuinely competitive and only lost out on the last lap, I was really, really impressed. This is the Pete Gasly that I fell in love with. He's back. So yeah, that's my driver of the day.
My only worry on Alpine is they look pretty good here in testing.
You only have one worry about Alpine.
Well, sorry. One of my worries. They look pretty good here in testing. What if they can only do Bahrain?
That would be so Alpine.
We have made a car entirely for 1/24th of the season.
Oh, they are going to be great at Bahrain F4, which I'm sure they'll take part in very soon. I was considering Gasly, and if he wasn't overtaken by Verstappen, I think I would have given it to him. But instead, I'm going to go with Oscar Piastri. He won the race by 15.5 seconds. That's pretty good. Harry?
Yeah, Oscar Piastri, Pete Gasly, as Sam calls him, were in on my list. To mix it up, I'll go for a third one that's different. I'll go George Russell. For all the reasons we mentioned beforehand, I think he was very impressive today, and to keep Norris behind him at the end was kind of what sealed it for me, because I don't think that Mercedes deserves to be in second again. So well done, George.
Also want to shout out Behrman. Does lots of points in that car.
Just
so
a valid shout.
What about worst driver of the day?
Get in the bin, worst driver of the day. Bin, worst driver of the day. You suck at driving.
Who have you got, Harry?
I'll give it to Liam Lawson, but that seems a bit savage, but mainly because he just kept hitting people, which he shouldn't do. I'm trying to think if there are any other major contenders. The likes of the Saubers and the Aston Martins were just terrible, so I don't really blame them that much for being that slow.
Yeah, the car's just terrible.
Yeah, so I don't really blame them. I know the Racing Bulls wasn't great this weekend, but Lawson made it really, really difficult for himself. So I'll go for him.
Sam?
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Lawson. The penalties were not good, but the pace also, it was kind of there with Hadjar. I mean, he ends up losing to Hadjar because of the penalties applied. So that's something at least. But you got to not hit people, and you got to respect the rules of the game to actually do a good job. And I can't really get past that. Completely agree with you on the Sauber and the Aston Martin. Whilst they were generally all terrible, I believe it was the car's fault and not the drivers.
Yeah, I've got Liam Lawson as well. Yeah, 15 seconds worth of penalties isn't great. It's actually worse than zero. So I kind of have to go with him here. I know he had good pace in that final stint after the safety car, but of those three slowest teams today, which seemed to be VCAR, Aston Martin and Sauber, he was the one lucky driver of the six who essentially got the right strategy call. He was on the soft tyre. in that stint, and none of the other 5 were. So the fact that he was able to build a gap on the other 5 was kind of expected, like he really should have done. But a few of those really clumsy moves into turn 1, I think they were rightfully penalised, I'm afraid. What about Big Brain Strat?
Bob, we're gonna need you to box for wets. What? It's not even raining out. What are you talking about? Yeah, and Bob, if you get a chance, let your teammate pass you. What? He crashed out. He's not even in the race.
What have you got, Sam?
I've got a serious one today. I'm giving it to Haas. I also, especially Ocon, I thought that they're staying out super late. They kind of did what Leclerc and Hamilton did, but it allowed them to cut through a lot of that midfield. It was just a really well executed strategy. Well done for just doing that. The big undercut with one, staying out super long with the other. I was super impressed. I thought it was a great turn of form.
Harry?
I'm giving it to Ferrari, and not trying to take the mickey out of them here. I mean, obviously there's the Bravo Delta nonsense that they're starting to do now. But even when they do a good strategy, it still goes wrong.
The words, please consider Delta, will live on forever.
As he's coming into the pit lane.
Please.
My big brain strat was, please consider
Please.
Don't do it, please, Delta.
Consider Delta.
A nice sequel to that, sorry, Ben, is just this tyre sucks, from which we've referenced already.
But it's actually a serious one from my side, because the fact that they ignored whatever Delta was, and we presume it was a one-stop, which, by the way, Pirelli lists their potential strategies before a Grand Prix. They put out 4 different strategies, and the 4th one was the one stop, and all the 3 above that were 2 stops. And I'm starting to think that they just call it based on the social media.
Surely not.
It's Ferrari. They might do.
Yeah, to me, it's like, guys, Twitter said this.
I just checked out X. We should definitely get on this strategy.
It's got 1K likes, guys. Let's do that one.
But they were right to go with what they went for, and they were still punished, which is quite funny. And no, I was going to say I feel sorry for them. It's just funny. Each of us has a moment of the Grand Prix, and Sam, we'll start with you.
I am going to go with Antonelli's overtake on Max Verstappen. It was to watch those two go wheel to wheel, this young protege who has no fear, and one of the best wheel to wheel races we've seen. That was electric. That's what F1's all about. That is brilliant wheel-to-wheel racing. The setup, the move, the fight back from Verstappen. Absolutely loved watching it. Want to see more of it. So, sensational.
Harry?
I had that listed down. Antonelli just sending it from Japan. I wrote down here on his move for signs. I'm actually going to give it to, I know this is quite Sky F1 based, so apologies for those who don't see that coverage. But on the grid, Martin Brundle went up to Bernd Mailander, the safety car driver, and said the phrase, and I quote, "There's a 20% chance you're going to get used tonight," which I thought was mildly threatening. So I made me laugh. So.
Crikey.
And he was right. But
say that to a lot of other things, and that goes down badly.
Did get used.
True. I'm going with something that's already been mentioned twice on today's episode, but I do really appreciate the radio messages that we get, but also when they're not broadcast and we just get the words, because you can then interpret it however you want to. Like, you can make up how someone has said something. And all I was thinking was, man, these tires suck. That's how Hamilton said it.
Yeah, it's in that pure, Nelson US Simpson style.
Yeah.
These tires suck.
That's how I read it, which, as we know, Lewis Hamilton famously imitates Nelson Muntz from The Simpsons.